I'm DJ Darbalicious in the morning, and right now we're premiering our big show From the Bench with Chris Kasparek. How are you doing, Chris?
Good.
And who do we have in for our first interview ever?
For our first interview ever, we have the athletic director of Naples High School, the Wildcats, Dirk Lambertson. Dirk, morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody.
How are you doing?
Good.
Good. Another thing with Dirk that we have him in, also, as you know, Darby, we started our fantasy football league, and Dirk is one of the gentlemen that is in our league with you, myself, and a couple other folks from the
returning champion. Did you add that?
You are the returning champion. You know, it's a new season, but we'll see how that goes. But the reason we have Dirk in this morning is he is the athletic director for Naples High School, the Wildcats, and we wanted to ask you a few questions this morning. What sports do we have going on this fall for our young athletes in the high school, and what can we expect to where these sporting events take place throughout the season?
Well, we're real excited at Naples High School this year. Our fall sports schedule is excellent. We got a lot of home games, especially with our men's and women's volleyball teams, our tennis program, and our cross-country program. Our cross-country team runs out at Kearney Park. So they have a really nice course out there that really challenges the young people, and this year with European qualifications, they have to run a certain qualifying time to be able to make Europeans. That it's not a shoe-in this year for cross country. Our girls volleyball team again is the returning European champions, and they are excellent. Got a lot of returners this year, plus some young people out there, and it's going to be an exciting year for them. The boys team is real strong with the boys volleyball team. We have three returning players, Sam Murdoch, Josh Hensey, and Austin Bain, who are excellent players and are really going to lead that team far, I think, into the Mediterranean Championship. And then again, our tennis team is always strong. And then, of course, we have our football team. Our football team who ended up second last year in Europeans for Division II. 10 minutes away from winning the whole thing. Excellent team, young this year, only 4 returning starters from last year's program that just dominated, went undefeated all the way to the championship game. So it's exciting around Naples. A lot of things to see and a lot of sports to watch.
And then this weekend was the weekend that the football team got kicked off, and they did get beat by Vicenza. But the next week, the big weekend that's going to be coming up in a couple weeks, we'll talk about it more on From the Bench as well, is the 28th of this month, when homecoming, where all of our teams are going to actually be playing here.
Right. September 28th will be the homecoming week. Football team plays Hohenfelds, and then I think volleyball and tennis will play MMI, and I believe cross country, I'm not sure off the top of my head who they're playing. So yeah, it'll be a big weekend. We're hoping our gym floor, which is being refurbished right now, will be done and ready for us to have our volleyball match at home. If not, then we'll be all over the place. We'll be at Kearney Park and Wildcat Stadium and at fit form for volleyball. So.
All right, so when we come back from the break, we've got another big question for the AD to see what some of the challenges are for him in his capacity as the athletic director for Naples High School.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, keep it tuned to 106 FM, The Eagle. We have more sports talk coming your way, but right now I have Stampa by Serena Ryder. Good morning, Naples. We are back with From the Bench with Chris Kasparek and Dirk Lambertson, and we have a couple more questions for Mr. Lambertson.
Yeah, absolutely, and we want to remind people, this is the first kickoff, the day of From the Bench, and one of the things that we want to do, so if you're listening throughout Europe, is we want to get some of those other high schools in the area, your information as well, possibly get you guys on the air as we figure out the technical aspects of, phoned-ins and things like this, because there's a lot of great athletes throughout the Europe region, and we want to try to get as many of them and their coaches here on From the Bench. So, Dirk, one of the things that, your job as athletic director, you've been a coach in the past. What are some of those specific challenges for an athletic director here in Europe in the DOT system as possibly maybe opposed to being an athletic director in the States?
Everything's far away. And then the amount of paperwork right now, especially because in the States you don't have to do a risk assessment plan. Kids get on a bus and go. Here you have to put the list of kids into RAP and make sure that it's the correct list, and then it has to be approved all the way up the line. Getting our coaches approved to be able to travel, getting that list together. It's just a lot of paperwork where you don't necessarily have that much paperwork in the States. In the States, we had eligibility that we had to run, and we had to watch, and physicals and things like that. We have all that here in Dodea, but we just add more to it. In the States, the athletic director is full-time. Here, I teach full-time, and then I do athletic directing on the side. It's a full-time job. So it's fun. I've 3 weeks now. I've coached for 24 years, and I feel comfortable with dealing with the coaches and knowing what to expect when things come up. It's just trying to make sure you cross all your T's and dot all your I's with the paperwork, so that the school doesn't get in trouble, or the teams and so forth.
Okay, and one of the things that being here a couple of years and then overseas for a while now, and your coaching experience, as you said, 20 plus years, I think that with military families or military youth, which would, and be in these leagues, I think we've all said that they're some of the most resilient youth that you're ever going to see. What are those unique challenges that they face every year from season to season that the people listening may not be aware of?
Biggest thing for us, Naples, is our travel. We don't play anybody. At least the football team doesn't play anybody that's not 10 hours away. They just went up to play for Chinza, and they left Thursday or Friday morning, and they arrived Friday evening around 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So they had a 10-hour bus ride, and then they played on a Saturday night, and then left close to midnight and had a 10-hour bus ride back down. So it's the travel time that it takes us to go anywhere. For teams that play AOSR or MMI, you have about a 2 to 3 hour bus ride. Most of the time in the States, when I played, we never had anything longer than a 30-minute drive. I lived in Fairfax, and we played all the teams up there in Fairfax, Virginia. So, but yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. And the kids, some of the kids really enjoy it. It really builds a team. When I was the head football coach, we went up to Brussels, we've been to Bitburg, we were all over the place, and we had like 20-hour bus rides, and you dread it till you get on the bus, and then it's fun. The kids really get to become a family and a team, and it's really bonding for everybody. So that's a big thing, because even if you lived up in Germany, you think a 4-hour bus ride's long. Come down and walk in our shoes. 4 hours is easy for us.
Right, and that's one of the things that we want to see. As we start to, interview more of the folks in this region, is see the different challenges that face our kids. When it comes to athletics. Now, Coach, we want to thank you for coming in this new capacity as athletic director, but we can't let you leave until we're going to be starting on From the Bench, a segment at the end. Good old Darby Ortega over there, she's sitting there, she's learning the system, and one of the things that we've discovered is we want to break down classic sports movies. And so every week at the end, we're going to be posting very early in the show. It might already be up on the AFN page.
It's already up.
It's up. Awesome. We're going to be having voting to say, okay, Darby, this is the movie you've got to watch before next week's From the Bench, and we're going to ask you some questions about that movie. So this week we actually have Brian's Song, Hoosiers, Field of Dreams, Bull Durham, and The Natural, all in their right minds. Great, sports movies. Dirk, we need to know, where would your vote go right now that what Darby has to watch before next week?
Well, it's football season, so she has to watch Brian's Song.
And Coach, I know you and I are comfortable in our manhood and such, but Brian's Song,
cried like a baby.
You cried like a baby, right?
Cried like a baby.
I kind of don't know what to expect. You keep saying crying like a baby, and I saw Marley and Me, and earlier you said it's Marley and Me cryable.
It is.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, this is one of those.
You didn't cry at Marley and Me?
Yes, I did.
Okay, well, you'll cry at Brian's Song.
You're gonna cry at Brian's Song because it's so uplifting. So, but Coach, thank you for coming in.
Does she know nothing about the movie?
She knows nothing about the movie yet.
Are you not going to tell her anything about the movie?
Absolutely nothing about the movie. Only it's Gail Sayers and Brian Piccolo. And so, again, folks, get on AFN, our AFN Naples Facebook page, vote for which movie you think we should be watching, and we'll pick in the next couple of days. Darby will look at that, tally up the scores, and that'll be the movie she watches before the show next Monday. So, Dirk, thanks for coming in, and we look forward to talking to your coaches and to you later this season.
No problem. Thank you, and we really appreciate Naples High School. Really appreciates the PR and talking about what the school's going on. The kids really appreciate being recognized, because out here it's a small American community, and it's good for these kids to be talked about. So.
All right.
Thank you for coming in. Coming up next, we're gonna be talking about the big games that happened this weekend. So stay tuned for that. But right now, I have My Chemical Romance. Good morning, Naples. You are listening to From the Bench here with myself, DJ Darbalicious, and also with Chris Kasparek. But right now, we are talking college football. So, Chris, what were the most important games this weekend from college football?
Well, we talked about a little bit earlier some of the games. One of the big one was Michigan over Notre Dame, Michigan beating Notre Dame. And the more important part of that game wasn't so much that Michigan beat Notre Dame, but this is the last time they're going to play. And that's a problem. That's a problem for me. That's a problem for a lot of folks. And this is coming from the fact, and if you don't know this, that the conferences are getting bigger, so then it's eliminating those games that teams could fill their schedule with. So as opposed to Michigan now being a part of the Big Ten, which isn't the Big Ten, it's actually got 100 million teams, it seems like these days, is now instead of being able to fill your schedule, their extra schedule with other folks, which included Notre Dame, now you can, and unfortunately a big rivalry is going to suffer because of that. Some other ones, and this was a big one, some of my friends out there, Florida lost to the U being Miami. I've got some friends over there in Japan, some friends here locally that loved this. Miami been on probation the last couple of years now. They've gone and beat Florida. Georgia beat South Carolina, which is a huge game. Steve Spurrier, the visor, takes a whooping from Georgia, which was big because Georgia lost last week to Clemson. And then a game that you don't hear about, which a couple years ago, and Darby, you and I were talking about this earlier, USC, one of your favorite teams.
Yes.
And they got beat this weekend by Washington State. And not only did Washington State beat them, they beat them in L.A. Yeah, exactly. So, this is a game that wasn't really on ESPN, wasn't really on Sporting News, wasn't in the papers. Didn't hear it. And you know why? Because USC isn't relevant anymore. They haven't been relevant for the last couple of years, and so they're in trouble.
Yeah, that hurts. I think probably the last time, even me, who used to be such a USC, huge fan, I stopped following after they switched coaches with
Lane Kiffin.
Yeah.
Not Lane Kiffin. Yeah, Lane Kiffin.
It was Pete Carroll left.
Pete Carroll left. Lane Kiffin came in.
And then there was
dad.
that accident in the room, in the weight room.
Yes, there was an accident in the weight room
so
with one of the injuries.
It kind of went downhill after that.
Yes. Well, we could go back, and maybe that was the start of the downfall. That would be a good something. We'll put our researchers on that, because from the bench, we have a lot of researchers on there here. I'm sending them out right now. We'll see what they have to say. The other thing is another big win this weekend, because, we are NSA Naples, being Naval Support Activities Naples. Big win for the Navy this weekend. Went into Indiana, which, a couple of our friends may not be so happy about, but they beat Indiana at Indiana. Big win for the Naval Academy. BYU, Brigham Young University, beat Texas at Brigham Young. And then that leads us to our big game. And one of the things is we talk a lot of sports, we rush through a lot of sports, and one thing is if you want to hear more sports, let us know on the AFN Naples Facebook page if you like what you're hearing today. But we wanted to, and Darby, this is going to be our pick of the week. We talked about every week we'll have a couple of games that we pick, and this week's is going to be Alabama, Texas A&M. As you guys know, listening out there, the big sports fans, Texas A&M has a little person we like to know, Johnny Manziel. Got in a little bit of trouble this year with his autograph signings. And the NCAA says, oh, hey, you know what? We're going to basically slap you on the wrist. Not really. We're going to fake it. It's going to be a fake slap on the wrist. You're going to miss a half of football against Rice. But this week he goes against Alabama. It's in Texas A&M at College Station. 12th man award to those folks there. But, Darby, I'm picking Alabama.
Okay, so I'm kind of, new to this whole watching sports and or even listening to sports. But I didn't know there was anything wrong with signing anything.
That's right. Okay, that's a good point. Our first lesson of the year for From the Bench.
Yes.
College players are not allowed to receive money for autographs. Autographs is fine.
Okay.
They can sign autographs all they want. If I'm walking down, someone wants to ask me for my autograph, great. Whatever, I can charge them if I wanted to. College athletics, college athletes cannot receive financial gain for their autographs. And so what happened with Johnny Manziel this year is that he, quote unquote, got busted possibly. Nothing was ever proven. They said he got money. Some people say he didn't. And the reason they found this out was there was an influx of autographs on the internet, on eBays and things such as this. And so what the NCAA did was an investigation. They came up with a compromise. They had a negotiation. This is out there for public consumption. And they decided, you know what? You can't play a half. And the problem that people have with that is at Ohio State, at USC, your favorite team, is some of these schools had big time violations, had to give up victories, had to give up scholarships for things such as this, and Texas A&M just had to have Johnny Manziel miss a half against a team, Rice, which really didn't have a chance of beating them anyway. So this week now you got A&M playing Alabama in A&M, and I'll tell you what, last year A&M beat Alabama in Alabama. It was kind of Manziel's coming out party. Alabama's going to put a whooping on this boy in Texas A&M in College Station this weekend. So that'll be our first pick of the week. And Darby, who do you got?
You know what? Just because I don't like what he did, I don't agree. I don't agree that with the decision that was made. Now that you've explained it to me, I don't agree that's wrong. Because for me, it's playing sports. Like, if you're going to play a sport, it's because you love it, not because you're going to get money out of it. And I mean, you do make a career of it, but I hope the people that do make a career out of it actually like what they do.
Right. And that'll be a good discussion as we go on, as From the Bench continues, as we get into these rules and get into these things. These are the kind of things, these are kind of debates that we're going to have on this show. And we got Darby fired up. We got her fired up. And the one thing we go back to, Manziel was never proven to have done this, all right? No one ever said, yes, here is the evidence. And that's why he didn't get a big suspension. But the reality is, in some of these other cases, where it was at USC, whether it was at the U in Miami, there wasn't a lot of proof in those cases either. So it'll be interesting what's happening. And Darby, for you, there's a Sports Illustrated article supposed to be coming out in the next couple weeks where some reporters have uncovered that possibly Oklahoma State was also cheating. And, we hate to see this in any college sports because college football, my favorite sport, you love USC. They lost this weekend, but we're going to continue this. We're going to debate it. So moving on, though, some other games we have this week. Navy plays Delaware because we want to focus on the service academies as well. Army has Stanford. Air Force has Boise State. If you had to pick out of those three games, Navy's really the only team that I'm going to be picking, and them over Delaware. And then the other thing that we'll talk about as the season progresses is the Heisman Trophy. So, who are you going to pick? Alabama, Texas A&M.
Alabama,
right on. So
it's Roll Tide, right?
Yes, it is Roll Tide. Yes, it is. So look at that, folks. Darby is learning. So now we're going to do just a little quick recap of the NFL this last week. It's the first week. There's not a whole lot of stuff going on. And as we progress further in the next couple of weeks, you'll get our picks for the Super Bowl and stuff. But the big thing was Thursday night. I mean, if you look back at this week in NFL, we still got a couple of games for Monday night. The big thing was Peyton Manning throwing 7 touchdown passes, which was your quarterback in fantasy football.
Yes, and it was my first pick.
It was your first pick, and I have to ask you, why did you pick Peyton Manning?
I looked up I Googled a lot, so I don't know if that's cheating or not in fantasy.
It is not.
No? Okay,
it
that's
is not
fair.
cheating in fantasy football.
All right,
no.
I didn't want to risk anything, so I went with a safe pick, and so number one safe pick, and one of the lists I was looking at was to choose Peyton Manning.
Absolutely. And Peyton Manning, just so you guys know some little fun facts, his seven touchdowns in that game were the first time that anybody had thrown 7 touchdowns in a game since Joe Kapp in 1969. Last year, the Kansas City Chiefs, as a team, threw 8 touchdowns for the entire season.
Oh.
And depending on what fantasy football league you're in with Peyton Manning, you could get from anywhere from 46 to 60 points. And 5 of those touchdowns, folks, were in the second half. 5 of them. One half of football, 5 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So, but as we come back from the break, we're going to talk about a little bit about Major League Baseball and why Major League Baseball is still relevant right now, as opposed to some people just not caring. And finally, we're going to hear a little bit of rant from me about the IOC, the Olympic Committee, and why they made the right decision in keeping wrestling in the Olympics for 2020 and 2024.
All right, you heard it here. Stay tuned. We are back to our premiere show of From the Bench here with myself, DJ Darbalicious, and Chris Kasparek. And right now, we are going to talk about why Major League Baseball is still relevant right now.
Yeah, and before we do, though, we want to remind folks, we were just looking on the FN Naples Facebook page, and we have the 5 movies that are up there to vote for you to watch. And for this next show, and we haven't had any votes yet, so we remind people to get on there and vote for which movie that you're going to watch, because right now we're leaning towards a certain way, I think, because it is football season. But if anybody has any other ideas, we want to hear them. And you're right, why is Major League Baseball relevant right now? Well, one word and one word only. Well, it's actually could be deciphered as 2 words, is the wild card. And most of the teams have already been decided in deciding the divisions. But right now in the American League, you have teams, Cleveland, New York Yankees, Oakland, Tampa Bay, Baltimore, Kansas City, who all still have a chance to get to the wild cards. You know, as we know, last year it increased to 2 wild cards in the American League and 2 wild cards in the National League. And those cities, the reason they care right now is because they still have a chance. If we didn't have the wild cards, they'd be done. Boston, Detroit, they've pretty much already clinched the divisions. They're up so big, you know, they're up between 8 and 10 games, respectively. And then in the NL, you still have 3 teams, actually 5 teams that are still relevant. You got Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, St. Louis, the Dodgers, and the Braves. The Dodgers and Braves have already basically clinched their divisions. They're running away from the pack, the Braves and Dodgers especially, because they got on hot streaks, which is hilarious because the Dodgers early in the season, hey, we're going to fire Don Mattingly because we didn't, win so many games to start off. But right now you got Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and St. Louis all in the same division, all in the Central, vying for one, who's going to win the division, 2 who are going to take the other 2 wild cards respectively. And you don't want to be one of those wild card teams because the wild card teams play one game to see who goes on to the next round.
All right, and I guess here's lesson number 2. And how exactly do these wild cards work?
So the wild cards are going to come out. So for you guys listening out at home, is the wild cards will come from the 2 next best records in baseball. So you have the American League and the National League. You have the division winners, the 3 divisions in each. Whoever the next 2 best records are the 2 teams that are going to get the wild card. And those can come from the same division. And that was one of the things that was happening in the past is, you had some, coming from different divisions within the leagues. And so it'll be interesting now to see that, especially this year, you got the NL Central, who you have Pittsburgh and St. Louis are swapping at the top, and then the other 2, Cincinnati, is fighting there as well. So you could have 3 teams in the playoffs from one single division, which is exciting. Not so much that it's 3 teams, but Pittsburgh is relevant again. I mean, who would have thought that, after yesterday, typically at this time of year in September, we're not talking about the Pirates, we're talking about the Steelers. Well, the Steelers, they looked awful yesterday.
Ooh.
Absolutely awful. So if you're a Pittsburgh fan, sorry. After yesterday's season's looking pretty tough. After your center gets hurt and that's the way you guys respond, sorry, long season.
So much information.
A lot of information.
Yeah.
And, as we move forward this year, we're going to be talking a lot about this. We're going to be talking about fantasy football. It's going to be talking about whatever the hot topics are right now. A couple weeks, we're going to be talking about in baseball, we're going to talk about, is A-Rod actually going to be held accountable for his actions? Because, he popped positive, then he's given all this information. End of September is when his hearing is, and we're going to see if he appeals his 211-game suspension, if that's going to get knocked down. But we'll see. That's the kind of information we are going to talk about. But right now, I don't know, we could take a break or we can discuss the Olympics.
No, Olympics. We're discussing it, yes.
So yesterday, big day, the Olympics for 2020 got voted on, and they're going to hold them in Tokyo, which there's a little bit of controversy with that. There's some people out there talking, and I've got some good friends, and I was in Japan myself. We had the tragedy disaster a few years ago now with the reactor, and, some people think it may be too soon, to be heading back to Japan and bringing the athletes to Japan, when they still have things that they need to be taken care of in that economy. I think this is probably done on purpose.
To bring back revenue?
To bring back revenue, the International Olympic Committee, you look at it and you say, hey, Olympics is a big sponsorship kind of thing. You have these, you have the camera companies, you have the fast food restaurants, you got McDonald's, you got the NBCs, the ABC, CBS's, AFN, everybody. It's a big thing of bringing in this money, and it's going to force folks to put money into the economy in Japan. It's going to force people to help the Japanese people even continue to move on past this. And then, so I'm excited for it. It's Tokyo, and Tokyo has hosted the Olympics before. They've done a great job. And having lived in Japan, I have no doubt that the Japanese people are gonna rock this Olympics. They're gonna do a great job with it. I'm excited to see how it transpires. That being said, another big decision that came out yesterday was with sports. There was a vote back in February. The IOC said, you know what, wrestling, you're out. You're not going to be in the Olympics in 2020, 2024. That is unheard of. It's the original Olympic sport. Well, the reason they did that was because wrestling's federation, little bit of corrupt, admittedly so. They will say it. You ask any of the wrestlers, they'll say that their federation was a little corrupt. They weren't listening to the International Olympic Committee. The International IOC had said to them for years, you need to start to change. You need to be more exciting. You need to change your scoring. You need to, what is going to draw people to watch you do this? And so they kicked him out. Well, wrestling, rightfully so, stepped up and started to get their act together, change the rules. And yesterday was the vote. It was between wrestling, softball, baseball combined, and squash. Which of those three were going to be included in the 2020-2024 Olympics? I watched it live. They had to all do a presentation. Wrestling did a great job. And then the IOC members asked them questions. How are you going to, one of the questions for the wrestlers, how are you going to include more women? Are women going to be involved in Greco-Roman wrestling? And they answered all those questions. They had the vote. They left. It took about 15 minutes, and rightfully so. Wrestling is back in the Olympics. It's the original Olympic sport. And where some folks who love baseball and softball might come out and say, well, what about baseball, softball? What about, we're a great sport. Get us in there. You know what? No, I don't think so.
What I see there is with baseball, softball, it just seems to be like, I don't know, maybe I'm saying it wrong or something, but it seems to be very American, and the Olympics are not American, they're worldwide. And wrestling is amazing sport to watch, and not only that, there's just so many different countries that are very, very good at it.
You're absolutely right, and the other part of it is baseball has the World Baseball Classic now. Okay, so all the countries playing this thing. Guess who has never won the World Baseball Classic? The U.S.
Really?
They've never won the World Baseball Classic. But more importantly is the Olympics for me, and again, folks, this is our information. This isn't some textbook kind of information that says Chris Kasparek and Darby Ortega, you must say this. This is my opinion. You don't agree with it? So be it. But Olympics are amateur sports. Baseball and basketball in the Olympics now, those aren't amateur sports anymore. It's the professionals that are playing. It's the NBA players. It's the Major League Baseball players. And you know what? You don't even have to be from that country. And some of these people are coming there. Alex Rodriguez, last time I checked, buddy, you're from the United States. You didn't play for the U.S. in the Olympics this last time. The wrestlers, on the other hand, those are amateur athletes. Those aren't professionals. They're not professional wrestlers. The professional wrestlers, that's another little thing that you can find them on TV on Monday Night Raw and Thursday Night Smack, whatever those shows are. SummerSlam, WrestleMania. But with the wrestlers, these are amateurs. These are kids, guys, males and females, who are wrestling in high school, elementary. They get all the way up, and this is their goal. This is the peak for them, the Olympic gold medal. So good on the International Olympic Committee, and I hope that wrestling gets their act together and wrestling understands, because I would bet money, and I would bet serious money, that we never see wrestling taken out of the Olympics again.
I hope not. I saw, from being in wrestling myself, I saw a lot of people sacrifice a lot of time, a lot of friends, a lot of anything, just so they could have their dream of going to the Olympics. So I'm glad that stayed.
Absolutely. And, like we said, I love Major League Baseball. I love baseball. I love softball. I'd love to see them in the Olympics again, but not at the loss of wrestling and not at the loss of amateurism. Baseball, softball, guess what? You want any of those sports, even basketball, because I'm a big proponent of, the Olympics need to go back to amateur sports. Get the pros out of it. There's some people that disagree with that. Some of my close friends probably disagree with that. But the key is Olympics is amateur. We don't always have to win. But we have a kind of a culture that, we always have to win. No, I would much rather see that kid get into the Olympics that wins that gold that nobody expected him to win. Not a lot of people love the Dream Team in '92. I wasn't a big fan. I'd much rather have seen college athletes go in there and try to win gold, because that's going to mean more.
All right, then, you heard it from here and from us and our opinions about what we think of the IOC's choice of bringing back wrestling. But coming up next break, which will be our final break for our premiere of From the Bench, will be what movie I will watch and talk about for next week. But here right now, I have Ordinary World by Duran Duran. And we are back for our last segment of From the Bench. This was our premiere show, so I hope you like it. And keep tuning in every Monday at 8 in the morning. But right now, we are about to choose the movie that I'm going to watch for this week and going to talk about next week.
Absolutely, because I think for sure you already have 2 votes. We had Dirk Lambertson in earlier. Thank you, Dirk, for coming in this morning to help us kick off the inaugural show From the Bench, the Naples Wildcats athletic director. And I would say right now the vote is leaning towards Brian's song.
Yes, it is. So,
we're gonna hand that bad boy over to you. You're gonna get some you're gonna get the movie issue to you along with a box of Kleenexes. you know, to Brian's song. And next week, we want you to come back in and we want you to tell us what you thought of the movie.
Okay.
But more importantly, whether you liked it or not. Because here, you don't always have to like things, just like you don't have to like what we say.
And also, on top of that, I don't mean to put this on you, but I mean, we do come from very different generations.
Absolutely.
We grew up very different.
Thanks, I'm an old man. Thanks. Appreciate that.
No. And I'm not going to say how old I am, and I'm not going to say how old you are. But we come from very different generations. We grew up very different. So we're going to like different things.
Absolutely. And that's what's going to make the show fun. We talked about that, you know, my background, a lot of sports, yours, sports as well in high school, but a different, coming from a different side of view of it. And so that's going to be, we're going to debate, we're going to give both of our opinions this year, this show. And, you know, we invite you guys to come in and give us your comments. Give us those things that maybe ticked you off in the sports world that you want to get our side on, because guess what? We're not going to hold back. We're going to give it to you.
Yes. All right. But stay tuned. We have more hit music coming your way. And this is it for our premiere show of From the Bench. But don't forget to listen to us next Monday at
8 o'clock.
Yes, so stay tuned.